If you're involved in some form of spirituality or religion, and you have a rabbi, an imam, some kind of clergy person or a spiritual leader, make sure that that's known and that you have a conversation with that person. That can be a big help. But if you're agnostic, secular humanist, or atheist, that doesn't mean you can't get somebody to serve as a secular humanist ceremony facilitator. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. If you're connected with hospice, get a hospice staff person in the loop as you're doing your planning. Death midwifery. There's some in this very room, including our own Sharon Stewart, who just recently became certified. And can I see a show of hands? Who's death midwives here? Yay! Well, let's honor our death midwives. Yay! Now, you may or may not want to have a funeral home involved. The two full-body natural burials that we've done, 2 different funeral homes have been involved. And as I did planning with the families for both of those natural burials, I talked about the funeral home option. Not required, and I know that there's some excellent work on home funerals, and some people prefer that. But other people do not want to deal with the paperwork or the transport of the body or the refrigeration of the body, and would really prefer to have a funeral home be part of the mix. So as you're developing your plan, if you decide that you want that as an option, find out who has refrigeration, who can keep a body maybe longer than a couple days. If you don't want to do the dry ice method, you want to use some other method. Who has a vehicle that might be filled with refrigeration options for you. Check that out and let people know who's going to be part of that. And then, of course, your cemetery director. Well, who are you going to get for your cemetery? Well, in a few moments, I'll share some input about that, and then I'm going to do a bit of a closing, because I know time is flying by pretty quick. So, with the Green Cemetery, you have some choices. It may be an all-green cemetery. No embalming, no liners. It's totally green cemetery. There is something called the Green Burial Council, where some green cemeteries are connected with that. We've been networking with the Green Burial Council, and one of our ministers, Nora Cedarwin Young, thresholdsoflife.org, wonderful website if you haven't really gone out to the web yet and looked at things. She does death midwifery training, but she's also been our liaison with the Green Burial Council. And while we aren't an official member yet, because we have those VA grave markers, and we're looking to find a category different than hybrid for us that really makes sense with that. It's really good to look at your choices, and you can have an all-green cemetery, or you might have one that's called a hybrid, where there are grave liners and they're embalmed bodies in steel caskets. Maizomanie, which is really close to Barneveld, has the Low Village Cemetery, and they have a green section. It used to be totally green, then they thought it was too much care, so now you have to get a fiberglass liner. Though they will let you flip it upside down, or at least they did for one of the burials that I helped with there, so that the body can return to the earth. So there's a lot of things like this having to do with cemeteries that's good to check into. So you have your support team. You've made a note of it. Not only their names, but their contact information, and not just a website because people moved. Put multiple postal address, phone number, emails, websites for the different people that are part of your team. Another thing you need to look at is, for green burial, what kind of ceremonies are you going to have? Are you going to have a funeral with the body present? If you're going to have a funeral with the body present, then is it an open coffin, casket, shroud, whatever, or not? That's an option. Or do you want cremation? That's a more expensive option in many cases, and it certainly involves a bigger carbon footprint because of all the fuel that it takes to heat the body up to turn it into the cremains. But some people prefer that. and other people prefer full body burial. So you'll have to think about funeral or memorial where the body isn't present. Are you going to have cremains? Will they be in an urn or not? Lots of different choices. You're going to have a wake? You're going to have visitation. Are you going to have a gravesite service? And what about the burial? And what about ceremonies after the burial? These are all things to be thinking about as you do your green burial planning. The burial ceremony can have a variety of different points. I generally have people arrive, there is some ceremonial moving of the body, and then there is an honoring of the person's life. Then there is the lowering of the body into the grave. Then you may want to do something ceremonial such as casting in rosemary. You know your Shakespeare, here's rosemary for remembrance. We often put dried flowers or herbs or some other tokens within the grave, and we permit that at our cemetery. And then there is the covering up of the body. Token soil, or do you fill in the grave? Filling in the grave is one of the most powerful things that can happen with a green burial. We have our graves pre-dug by a neighbor who has a backhoe. Easier. Yes, there's a charge for that, but our energy goes into filling in the grave. And I can tell you of the 2 full-body burials that we've done and all the interments with the cremations, that whole aspect of putting the soil into the ground, therapeutic, cathartic, and something very primal. You know, as we started out thinking about our ancestors way back, they did it. We can do it too. And then at the end, when it's totally filled in, putting some flowers, doing some final words. Graves do settle, so having some aftercare is important. Well, finally, what kind of cemetery considerations should you have? Well, it's location. How big is it? What's their attitude towards longevity of the cemetery project? Rural, suburban, urban, public, private. What's your access? What's the security like? What about the winter? If you die during the winter. Mesomaini and natural paths, because I talked with Kevin today on the way over here, do have winter options. Our cemetery, way in the back, haven't figured out that as an option yet. How are the grave sites marked? What are the rules? What are the restrictions? Can you get a vehicle there? Payment. You actually buy the piece of land on the plot, or do you donate to a center? Is it nonprofit or profit? What are your body container options? A shroud, a wicker basket, a cardboard cremation container, a pine wooden box, a quilt. A couple options out in the hall. And do you get to pick your site, or is it the next one in line? Those are some things. Well, as I close, I'm going to read something that we sometimes do, not only at our natural burials, remains and bodies, but I've done this in other cemeteries. It's attributed to Mary Elizabeth Fry. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am in 1,000 winds that blow. I am the softly falling snow. I am the gentle showers of rain. I am the fields of ripening grain. I am in the morning hush. I am in the graceful rush of beautiful birds in circling flight. I am the starshine of the night. I am in the flowers that bloom. I am in a quiet room. I am in the birds that sing. I am in each lovely thing. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I do not.